Hi guys, Tracy back with part 2 of the layering tutorial that I started. If you didn't see part 1, be sure to check it out. In this video, I'm going to just share my process for making uh, a layered layout. I'm using the Scraptastic Never Tear Us Apart kit, and speaking of tearing, I did tear to add some texture to that piece of cream colored paper. And you see the way that I'm doing this is I'm just kind of holding the papers with the photo so that I can have a sense of size and scale. And I want, as I mentioned, for the more bold patterns, I want tiny bits peeking through, and for some of the more subtle patterns, I want more showing. And so I am going to mat this photo on a piece of brown plain cardstock that did come in the kit. And again, I'm going to use my ruler here to tear a straight edge. Using the ruler keeps it fairly straight, but it does add a lot of really nice, yummy texture here. And with the fall layout, I kind of want to replicate the idea of a bunch of crinkly leaves all together. I don't want all of my papers to look like just a whole bunch of mats, so I'm making sure that some of my papers aren't quite big enough to fully mat the paper above it. So although all of these are kind of nesting, this blue one here doesn't extend out as far on the right-hand side, so it looks like it's just kind of tucked in behind. As I mentioned when I talked about angles and curves, I want all these papers to be not completely straight in how they're lined up, but I also don't want them too askew. So they're almost straight, but they're not quite straight. I had a look at my little paper clip little box that I keep on my desk, and I want just the right amount of this chevron pattern, which is another fairly bold pattern. So I want enough of it that I can appreciate that it's a chevron, but I don't want too much of it showing, so I just tucked it in behind. And these foam dots here are perfect for layering a whole bunch of papers together, and these ones are from Stampin' Up, and I'm just showing you here that they're quite a bit thinner than the other brand that you get. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the other brand. It might be EK. There are a couple of different manufacturers that make these thicker dots, so I like to keep them both on hand because sometimes I just want a little bit of lift on my edges, and then other times I want a lot of lift, and the more lift you give, the more of a shadow it casts, and that adds more interest and dimension to the layout. So I'm just sticking these, and you'll notice I'm not taking off the backing. If you take off the backing, then it limits how much you can tuck in behind there. So by just attaching it to the top layer, I can still peel back those layers and tuck little things in behind like I just did with these two doilies. And so what the doilies are doing, pardon me, is they are providing a bit more softness. And then I also have added this piece of gold waffle paper to the back in a horizontal line, or sorry, in a vertical line. And that's adding a bit of contrast to the fact that all the rest of my layers tend to be horizontal in this particular layout. I just cut that little skeleton leaf so that it could poke out in two different places. So it looks kind of like there's two stuck in there. And I'm going to use these tiny little doilies that are from No Small Wonders on Etsy, and I'm going to just kind of tuck them in for additional softness and interest in a couple of different places. There's a whole lot of rectangles in this layout, so I need to add some other shapes, and that's where these doilies and the leaf comes in. And I love the backside of that doily. It's just the perfect shade of cream. So I'm fussing a little bit with the placement of that gold waffle paper. I don't want it to be too uneven, so I just kind of took it off and put it back on. Oh, and here's where I realized I had two of those yellow doilies. Sometimes they stick together and you really have to check and make sure you've only got one. I certainly don't want to waste any of them because they're a very unique item, and I think somebody sent them to me. I'm pretty sure it might have been Craft and Kate. If it wasn't, I'm really sorry to whoever did send them. um, so here I have a wood veneer that I just tied a bit of twine around, and I also have those 3 resin hearts. No, they're not hearts, they're flowers. The 3 resin flowers, and I just have attached them to a piece of wax paper so that I can keep them as a threesome and check them out where I want to put them around the layout. Now I put another piece of wax paper down, which I'm going to start my title on. And my original idea was that I would do apple picking, so I would put the word apple in this wood grain thicker that came in the kit, and then I was going to find a smaller font for the word picking. Part of me here is thinking the word apple should be red because apples are red. Now I've kind of changed my mind and decided I want to call this layout Picking Apples, so I had to add an S there, and I'm going to use another font from my stash for this. I'm having a look through the red and orange thickers that I have, and then I realized I have these letters from the Pier that I haven't used before. And I love being able to pull out stuff from my stash. I also pulled out those those Studio Calico letter stickers as well, which are also orange. And my idea here is that I'd like to spell out the word picking. So I have to go through these these little word tiles very one at a time in order to pick out all the letters. And my idea is that I'm going to kind of slide them in behind the word apples. So that it's behind and on top of, so that it looks like apple picking or picking apples. And I think this is a pretty good way to use these letter tiles because they're see-through, so you can still see all the layers in behind, and they're quite bold. So I think they add a lot of energy to this layout. I'm really pleased that I was able to use them on this. Now the kind of picky little thing about these letters is that you do have to peel this piece of transparent stickiness off of them. And really, to be honest with you, if I knew how much time this was going to take, I probably would have decided to just leave them as they were. It's not really essential. You'll see that the ones that are peeled are quite a bit shinier than the ones that are not peeled. So once you've started peeling them, you know, I felt like I had to continue, but they certainly look fine a little bit flat without taking the peeling off of them. So I think when I use them next time, I'm probably not going to peel them because it does take a lot of time to just get your fingernail under the edge. So, yes, the other thing I wanted to say is that I love being able to grab things out of my stash, like these letter stickers, and then there's another set of letter stickers I'm going to use, as well as some of those layering papers that didn't necessarily come in the kit, but the kit gives me a good base of supplies to use for this layout, and then I can just draw in stuff from my own stash, and that way I get to use my own stuff as well and work my way through it, so I can, of course, buy some more stuff. That's what we do, isn't it? So hopefully I'll be finished peeling these soon. I probably should have sped this up a little bit more. But in the meantime, I didn't mention that little corrugated man who adds an interesting shape because he's not just a circle or a square, and also some texture because of the corrugating on him. So I'm trying to, balance all those shapes and colors and textures and curves and lines kind of all at the same time. It's not as complicated as it really sounds. It's just about taking a look at what you've got and saying, okay, what's missing, and then finding something and poking it in. And so here I am stapling the letters apples onto my layout, adds another amount of texture. The thing to keep in mind with stapling and sewing on a layered texture is that once you've stapled and sewed, you can't add any more layers underneath of that. So that's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes you can just, like right there, I only really stapled 2 of the layers together, so I could stick something in between apples and picking if I wanted to, but I'm probably not gonna do that because that would take away a bit from the title. I try to keep my stapling and sewing to the very, very end of my layout. And so now I'm going to use these little doilies to create little embellishment clusters. And I'm also going to use this paper bag, and I'm cutting through both layers of it at the same time. And that's the double embossed dotted lace. I think that's what that one is called. It has a weird name. Stapler, or no, not stapler, it's a punch. Sorry, I got confused there. And I've punched the paper bag in 2 layers, and then I just stapled it together with my tiny attacher just in a place that I knew it wouldn't show, just so that it stays attached. I'm going to kind of curve up the layers of that so that it looks kind of interesting that there are 2 layers of it, and so that you can tell that there are 2 layers of it. Just used my regular ATG adhesive to stick that under. And now I used my Stampin' Up! Scallop border punch, which has a smaller scallop to it. And here I go, I'm just kind of rolling up the edges of one of the layers so that you can tell that there are 2 layers of scallops there. Scallops. And gonna do the same thing with the other one. It's easier to do it in my hand than it is on the layout, so I'm just going to do that before I glue it down. Check the placement and then run some adhesive on it and stick it in. So those just add some softness to those edges. All along I haven't committed to a background yet, and here I'm not sure. Yes, here I commit. So I'm cutting the strip off of that piece of my Mind's Eye cream colored paper. I'm going to cut out one of these cameras. This paper came in the kit, and I'm just going to use this camera as an embellishment. So I'm cutting it out, and on the first pass I didn't go into all the details, so now I'm going to go back and cut around some of the details on the top part of the camera, and that's going to tuck in somewhere. I haven't quite decided where yet. It's going to go up at the top eventually. Yep, right there. Yes, that's how it's going to go. I really like that cluster up there in the top right-hand corner. And then this mason jar with the flowers at the bottom, I really like too. So they're coming together nicely. I'm using my Zig 2-way glue pen to put that little man on the doily, and then I just added the resin flower, and I'm going to glue him right onto the camera and put them all together. So that's what that cluster looks like. His head is right dab in the middle of the lens of the camera, and that's kind of just a coincidence. And then I've just took a punched heart off my desk. I keep a bunch of punched hearts there all the time. I'm putting that heart kind of on his chest. I really like that look. The first person who I saw do that was Karen Adamski, and I think I said her name right. I've been using it ever since I saw it, so that's a total copy from her, but it's a really nice look. So now I'm just trying to make that other cluster with those tiny little punched doilies make the perfect little backing for a little cluster of embellishments like this. It just kind of brings them all together and makes them look like they belong instead of just kind of floating on your layout. So I love putting those kinds of clusters. I'm just showing you here that I'm actually moving where that leaf is. I took it out and basically I'm just moving it back 1 layer because it was getting lost. I couldn't really see it behind the letter chips there that say picking. So now I'm going to use my ATG to just get a bit of adhesive on the back side of that doily and plop it right down there in the bottom corner. So there's that. And now I want to use one of these die cut tags that came in the kit, and this one says love, and I'm just going to experiment with a couple of different places to put it. Could put it there, but I've got this big chunk of space here to fill, so I think I'm going to put it here. And I don't necessarily want it to be white, so I'm having a look at what colors of mists I have, because misting is a really fast and easy way to change the color of something. So I'm taking Seafoam and Water Cooler, which are both Mr. Huey's colors that I have, and so I'm just grabbing those. I keep them up on the shelf right above my workspace. And I'm moving things around so that I have room for my misting box. This is just a cake box that I use. Having a little sip of tea. I don't drink tea very often, but I'm on a bit of a tea kick. So that's the seafoam. It just kind of gives a nice light covering, and then I just misted it with some of the water cooler that's a darker color. It just adds a bit of interest and almost like a texture. I'm going to apply some adhesive. I always like, okay, I'm going to show you this. Let me slow this down. So you see how the adhesive is kind of showing because the strip of adhesive is actually wider than the piece of paper that I'm putting it on. When you use the ATG gun, when that happens, you can just hold it up and use your finger to just roll back that extra adhesive so that it's not showing anymore. And that is a tip that will get you a lot more use out of your ATG. So some of the times when you think your ATG is too thick, you can actually use it. You just have to take that extra step of pushing the adhesive back so it doesn't make a mess all over your layout. I actually thought about putting a heart inside of the negative space of the heart in that tag that says love. Then I thought that it would just be a little bit too much, and so I decided not to. I was just looking up where the farm was, and I thought about actually using that label that says Boats Farm on my layout, and then I decided against it. I'm looking at these stickers that come in the kit because I want to add a subtitle that says Boats Farm. I want to be able to remember this is a new place that we went this year. We always go apple picking, but the place that we went to for about probably 6 years closed a couple years ago. So we've been going to all different ones, and we really liked this one, so we want to go back. So I want to make sure I write down the name of this place. So I have boats here written out with these Studio Calico letter stickers from my stash, and I'm just kind of having a look at how that's going to fit on various stickers that came in the kit. And it's not fitting all that well on any of the stickers or tags that I have here. But I'm going to go with this pink one because it fits the best on that one. And so I'm just going to stick it down. I'm actually not sticking it in the place it's going to stay, but luckily some of these crepe paper stickers have some give to them, so you can actually take them off once they're down, as long as you haven't pressed too hard. So I totally misestimated the length of this word and how it was going to cover up the words that came on that sticker. So I had to kind of shuffle them all over to the side to make sure, despite using my waxed paper, which is supposed to keep that kind of thing from happening, I still misjudged it. So now I'm just going to shuffle that over a little tiny bit because it seemed a little bit like it was floating out in the air there. And here it's kind of anchored along with the flowers, so it's kind of touching them better. So I think I'm almost done here. I'm not sure exactly what else I'm going to do. I am going to use my roller date stamp, and this is a Dear Lizzie one. And here's a problem that sometimes happens when you're stamping on a roller date stamp. See how I've got that little blob right beside Lovely Day? I'm just going to take my wet baby wipe and just rub that off, because otherwise that blob is very likely to get on my layout. And sometimes that doesn't look bad. Sometimes it's kind of part of the look, but I didn't want a big blob on this layout. So I just did multiple stamps there. The thicker was keeping me from stamping it exactly the way I wanted to. The thicker was too close to it, but I finally did get it looking the way I want, and the multiple stamps make it look kind of casual. So I finally adhered all of the layers onto the background, and here are some of the close-ups. I am actually going to add something here, so I thought about adding these little hearts. Felt like it needed something else, so I'm going to add some enamel dots in a couple of different places, and I'm adding them in threes. Well, I'm adding 3 there, and then I'm going to go back over to the other place that I added one and add a second one right there. And now it's done. So here's some of the close-ups of the layout, and there are some pictures to follow. So I hope that you guys found this tutorial on layering to be helpful. If you have any questions or comments, just drop me a line here on YouTube. Sometimes it does take me a little while to get back to your comments and questions, but I always do. I read them all, and I certainly reply to any specific questions or anything that needs to be replied to. But I'm a little bit limited because I have to wait until I'm on my computer, my actual computer, to be able to reply. So thanks so much for watching, everybody, and have a great scrappy week.